voice you're going to be listening to for the next hour, and we're going to go ahead and dig into our presentation. So just a little bit about Record to start. We are the world's leader in automatic door installations and cutting-edge technology in the market. Founded in 1953 and headquartered in Ferrotor, Switzerland, Record is known for a lot of things: Swiss precision, American craftsmanship, as well as our SMART technology. SMART's actually an acronym. It refers to self-monitored accurate reporting technology, and that's basically an LED panel that provides diagnostic information in plain English script so that the untrained can identify issues without needing a service call. It's also equipped with some easy-to-use buttons to change the mode of operation instead of light diagrams and rocker switches. Now, onto the course. Benefits and function of automatic slide and swing door systems. In this course, we're going to discuss how exceeding expectations and standards and codes can set a point of egress up for success. Let me just take a pause. I'm going to mute everyone. If you're not muted, please do. Great. As always, it's an honor to be a continuing education provider, and we appreciate the invitation today. Please, as Jillian said, make sure that I have your AIA number or whether or not you'd like a certificate to ensure we get your one learning hour learning unit HSW credit for being involved today. And again, feel free to use that chat to enter any questions you might have that we'll go ahead and answer in real time. Safe, clean, convenient. Basically says it all. Today's consumer is always looking to what benefits them the most, and in every detail. Even how they enter a place of business today, I think, really determines where they may or may not go. So today we're going to cover why using automatic entrance egress solutions, some of the industry standards that apply, and when and where an automatic door is the best answer. To start, let's briefly overview automatics as a whole. A couple door types I'm sure you've walked into a million times. At the top left, we've got a bi-parting slider. Top right, we've got a surface mount operator. Below that, we've got a high energy swing door. And then to the left of that, we see our folding doors, which really fill the gap between our swinging and sliding doors. Of course, one of the codes and standards that we're going to pay close attention to today is the American Association of Automatic Door Manufacturers, often known as ATOM. Initially, it was made up of the 7 leading door manufacturers in the early 1990s. Today, about 12 of the leading door manufacturers are involved members. It was founded to promote that safe and proper installation of automatic doors and also to protect the end users from litigation. The problem was people weren't used to how these doors worked, and so were finding themselves injured or hurt or being hit by doors. And so as a way to avoid any litigation, ATOM decided, you know what, it's time that we streamline things and figure things out. Sai, did you have a question? I see your hand up. All good? Great. So one of the safety protocols that ATOM put into place, of course, was the daily safety checklist. And that's a sticker that's put on every jamb of every automatic door as a quick 5-minute reference for that key holder or that manager to go ahead and at the top of the day, make sure that that door is in optimal working performance. And this allows for that door to not have any severe issues occur in between its annual check, which is recommended by ATOM. We suggest that an ATOM certified inspector get out at least once a year, take a look at that door and make sure that it's doing fine. Of course, in your builds and designs, you're not always going to have the opportunity to have one person check every door every morning all the time. In situations like a hospital or a hotel, it just might be overwhelming and too much. And that's where a preventative maintenance contract could come in handy. Across the industry, these are going to be available. Sometimes we see them for every 3 months, every 6 months, but certainly once a year, you want to have all of your automatics inspected. So in your specifications, you want to make sure that that quality assurance includes that an ATOM member is there to install that door. And in addition to that, that the manufacturer also be a certified ATOM provider. A couple other of the codes that we look at very closely are going to be the ANSI BHMA codes, specifically 156.19 power assist in low energy operated doors, as well as ANSI 156.10 power operated pedestrian doors, colloquially known as high energy. So I think it's really important to appreciate where we are today to remember where we came from. So a little history lesson for you. In the 1960s, a gentleman in Texas had a client with a restaurant in New Orleans. And the restaurateur said to the contractor, I want to open this patio area and serve the customers outside, but the swing of this door is really eating up too much real estate. And it's really difficult for my servers to walk out of there with these big trays of food. The contractor said, hey, let's build a door that slides and slides automatically. So from day one, the slider has really been a solution to a question, which I think remains true today. Then in the 1970s, the electromechanical drive system came out to replace that hydraulic system that first door was outfitted with. We know hydraulics can have a tendency to be a little messy, so now the door is a little bit more cleaner, a little bit more reliable. Then in the 1980s, sensor technology hit the fray. If you take a look at that picture on the bottom left-hand side, you'll notice those directional arrows and that universal do not enter sign on those mats in front of the doors. It's those mats that actually actuate these doors to open. Simple science, there's two plates facing each other on the floor there, and when depressed, they complete a circuit, and that allows for those doors to open. Problem with this, as we all know in Akron-Canton, Cleveland, Ohio, period, our climate is very extreme. We see moisture, we see snow, we see salt, and it's those things that can actually make a mat desensitize, and specifically those plates within. And so in the 1980s, when sensor technology came out, if you'll take a look at that picture in the center, the industry as a whole found a new way to make entrances more reliable and more safe for the pedestrian. Then, of course, in the 1990s, the belt drive and the microprocessor came out. The belt drive was instrumental in making the slider a more efficient machine. After the belt drive was installed, pulling those doors, it basically allowed for us to use less energy in order to operate those doors day in and day out. I can't speak to the industry across the whole, but for a record slider, typically, it only takes about $25 a year to run that slider. And then, of course, with the microprocessor, we were able to gain metrics. What is that door doing and how? How many cycles does it see before it needs any service? We've currently got one door in Canada that we're monitoring via microprocessor that's hit almost 1.2 million cycles. And we know that now because of the microprocessor. Then in the 2000s, we realized that unfortunately, because of 9/11, it wasn't only important for our doors to reliably open and close, but also to be fail-safe and fail-secure and tie into an on-site security system. And then, of course, in the 2010s, safety and cost became an ever more present concern as the recession of '08 happened. And so we looked inward in the industry and said, how can we better make our doors to be just as beneficial as a typical manual door, not just at the upfront cost, but at that cost down the road. And that's really where smart door technology came from. If you take a look at that picture on the bottom right, that's that LED panel that's housed in the jamb of a lot of our sliders, some of our operators. And what this does is it allows the people who are on site to see exactly what's happening with that door. So for example, if a piece of rock salt, which we're all very familiar with, gets stuck in the track of a Walmart, let's say, that panel will read obstruction. And then the person who's there dealing with that door can go, oh, okay, that means that something's blocking the door. They'll view the threshold, see that rock salt, chip it out, recycle the door, and then they're back in business with no need for a service call and no holdup on losing energy in and out of that point of egress. Now, a couple of purposes that automatic doors serve really, I think, is to provide convenience to the user. It's ever more important that people not touch as many things as we used to, right? In addition to that, they're going to make an entrance safer. If we were all in a room together, I'd ask, show of hands, how many of you have been smacked in the heel by a manual door? Or how many times have you gone to open a manual door and the wind's ripped it out of your hand? All of these things, of course, cause hazards. And beyond that, an automatic door is going to assist with heating and air conditioning costs. You know, I'm unabashedly and unapologetically very Midwestern. And so if somebody's 20 paces behind me, chances are I'm going to be holding the door open for them, awkwardly making them hurry up and get to the door. We've all done it. But what's great about automatic doors is you just keep on walking because you know that door is going to open again for that person who's behind you. And that's why they control the traffic flow in and out of the building. You just see less bottleneck. People aren't as agitated. And because we don't have to touch them, it helps to prevent the spread of germs. A few reasons to use automatic doors. We know that customers prefer automatic doors, especially when they're pushing a cart or carrying in bags. An automatic door is really nice, and that's what makes them convenient. When I'm speaking with our architects, I often say, image and aesthetics often get clouded in that idea of, a slider is a rectangle with a mid rail and two pieces of glass. But I'm going to show you at the very end of this presentation how I invite you to think out of the box. An automatic door can be so much more than that rectangle, depending on what the aesthetic is of that build. And of course, the cost value analysis has proven their worth over time, and especially for our high energy where heating and air conditioning HVAC is concerned. In addition to that, the service and the usability of these doors. And that's, of course, what makes them very safe and not only compliant with the ADA, but it often exceeds the ADA. And again, with your ATOM certified technician, you're going to get a certified professional install that's also very accountable. We're going to scratch the surface on a lot of what the ATOM certified technician looks at. However, I just want to let you know it's quite rigorous. So there's a 2-day learning session, a 3-section test. They have to get a certain percentage correct on this. I'm an ATOM certified inspector, so I've gone through this process. But every door we touch, we actually have to fill out a sheet of paper and send that back to headquarters to say, this is the door that I touched, this is what I found, this is why I failed it, or this is why I passed it, so that we're all accountable in every pedestrian's safety. Speaking of safety, I think it's also very important to further define the ADA so we can examine exactly how automatics exceed the ADA. Of course, this is a civil rights law, not a building code. So it's not a suggestion, it's a law. Passed into law in July 1991 and was really designed to provide protection for folk with disabilities. Right now, about 50 million Americans have some sort of disability that doesn't allow them to freely enter into an entranceway. And of those 50 million Americans, about $175 billion in discretionary business is controlled. When I think of the ADA, I often think about my grandparents, and that's why I want to just kind of go through a couple scenarios with you. When thinking about the ADA, my grands often go to this ice cream joint every Sunday. And, it's outdoors, but it's something that they do typically. The folks up here on the top left, I imagine that's that idle Tuesday, let's go to Starbucks, Mom, and grab a coffee and enjoy the outdoors. But, she's got her bag on her shoulder, so she's a little off kilter, and Pops is trying to be a gentleman, opening the door for his bride. But of course, they don't want to be touching these doors. They're probably going to, mask up after they walk in and hand sanitize and go through all that. How easy would it be if they could just walk right in? Maybe they would go more than just on that idle Tuesday. And then at the top right, I always imagine this woman as that busy working mom. So busy, in fact, that she's already got her stroller outfitted with a steering stick because she knows she's going to have to manipulate some manual doors today. How great would it be if she could literally stroll up to a door and just walk right in? And then, of course, I always associate myself with the woman at the bottom right. And both of my bosses are on this, so they will know. I really appreciate the fact that she's got her laptop in her arm. She's got her lint roller in her hand because she just dropped the dogs off at daycare. She's at risk of spilling her coffee on her phone as she's talking to her boss, telling him about the last presentation she just gave, all while she's trying to walk in this door. But how great would it be if she could just go about her business and walk straight through this entrance? And then, of course, in times of COVID, I imagine this gentleman at the bottom left is that small business owner who's really doing his very best to ensure his client's safety by swabbing this door down every 15 minutes or every time someone touches it. But how could his time be better spent? We're all entrepreneurial here. Time is money. He could be developing recipes or even keeping the books, but not scrubbing this handle down. Automatic door would solve that problem for him. Now that we've talked about automatics as a whole, let's drill down into our swing door automation. Of course, swing door automation is governed by the ANSI standards 156.10, power operated doors, colloquially known as high energy, and for our low energy, 156.19. But let's ask ourselves, what is the difference? And this is where you're going to want to ask yourself some questions to really determine your application. So what does that opening need? Do we want to control the traffic flow and patterns? That's going to be high energy. Of course, they're both going to be convenient. They're both going to be ADA compliant. and exceed ADA. For energy savings, we want to consider a high energy door, like at a grocery store. For your clear opening requirements, you know that your building codes are often going to be a 32-inch clear opening. But what type of door is in that opening? How tall is it? Does that affect the weight? Is there glazing in it? And that's where you're going to want to take a look at both, just to ensure that you've got the right operator on there. Also, you want to ask yourself some questions about how many cycles it might see. And that might determine whether you get a standard duty opener or a heavy duty opener. And then, of course, what type of automatic operation do you want to see on the store? Will it be sensor based, or will it be a knowing act like a push plate or a keypad or a wave plate? And of course, those are governed both by high and low energy. So for our intents and purposes today, let's imagine that we are designing a high energy swing door. And we know this because we want to control the traffic flow and pattern. We want hands-free operation. We want it to be very convenient, energy saving, and compliant with the ADA. And for our automatic operation, we get to choose, depending on what that opening really requires, whether it's sensor-based or push plate. High energy is going to be the only one that could use either sensor-based or push plate. Low energy is always going to use a knowing act. And then, of course, because it's a high energy door, there are going to be some safety devices that we also need to include. So, as defined by ANSI 156.10, a high energy door is a power-operated pedestrian door that opens automatically when activated by a sensing device or by a knowing act. Required safety devices like your guide rails and warning decals reduce the chance of user injury or entrapment. So your high energy swing door requirements per the standard include that operation be hands-free. There's 6 seconds from open to close, and then it operated a maximum of 30 pounds of force. You're going to want to specify that complete with your safety sensors, guide rails, that proper signage, and of course your ATOM installation. As we're talking about knowing act and sensor, I think we should probably further define that as well. Your sensor-based activation refers to the activation of an automatic door by means of infrared or microwave motion detector that it activates that door when motion is detected in its assigned area. If you take a look at the picture on the left-hand side, you'll notice that the surface mount, that these doors have red light curtains shining in what is called the safety zone. The safety zone is that area where the doors swing into, where a person could be, entrapped or injured or hit. So that's the safety zone. Remember that. So those red light curtains are shining down in the safety zone via our surface mount presence sensors, and that's a safety device. The most important thing to know about a safety system is that it keeps a closed door closed and it keeps an open door open when motion or presence is sensed. So if I was being a jerk and standing in this safety zone of this one-way door, if the woman on the right attempted to walk out, those red light curtains are going to notice my presence and keep that closed door closed. However, if everything's normal and as it should be and there's nobody standing in the way, once this woman on the right goes to walk out, she'll walk out, but you'll notice that there are also red light curtains shining in her threshold, in the path of her movement. And that's to ensure that someone like me doesn't get hit when they realize that they left their phone at the register. They double back, they go grab their phone, and they come back and are able to walk back out. It's that doubling back that this protects that pedestrian from. If it weren't for this safety feature, I probably would have been hit by a couple automatic doors by now. In addition to that, your guide rail is going to have its own requirements. So a guide rail shall be 30 inches high, and it's going to project from the jamb to the leading edge of the widest door panel. We always say widest door panel because it is quite possible that you could have an uneven pair of doors. And so it's going to be that widest leaf that determines exactly how long both of those guide rails are. That guide rail also needs to have a mid-rail. That way small children don't run into that safety zone and get smacked by the door. That's bad. And then, of course, when a fully automatic door is installed in a hallway and the distance between the wall and the door in the 90-degree open position is less than 6 inches, you won't need a guide rail. And we're going to show you some images of that later when we talk about our folding doors. Of course, your door is installed, everything is safe, secure, sleek, and then we come along with these big stickers. However, these are the tool we use to convey the universal message to the pedestrian, how any particular door operates. So we can't change any of the color or wording because we want the message to be clear. The last time you were out on the road and you saw that octagonal red and white sign, at the very least, you paused and maybe even came to a complete stop. But I would guarantee that you didn't actually, because you know exactly what that sign means. You know that it means stop. And we want the same to be true for our required signage here. Of course, another safety system is our battery backup, and especially great for a swing door. Fits inside the header, meets the California Building Code, could be added at any time. It's also charging itself on the energy that the door uses day in and day out. And so a great way to ensure that should you have a blackout, that door will keep operating to ensure that pedestrians are able to get in and out. I used to be a glazer in a former life, and so for me, stained glass and leaded glass was the height of that career for me. And I love this picture because it really illustrates not only the beauty of this stained glass entrance, but the all glass entrance here highlights the fact that this low energy swing door has a header with no sensor on it. And that's because your low energy swing doors always are operated by a knowing act. And as defined by 156.19, a low energy door operator is one that opens the door automatically with less than 15 pounds of opening force when activated by a knowing act, like a push plate or a wave plate, a keypad or a key switch, and safety devices like your guide rails or your surface mount presence sensors are generally not required. So just as we did with our high energy doors, we're going to determine that same application. And for our intents and purposes now, a low energy door. We want to ask ourselves, what does this opening need? Of course, ADA compliance. I want to use air quotes here, hands-on operation, because it's quite possible that we could not be using our hands to touch anything. And we'll talk about that in a second. And then, of course, our clear opening requirements. Again, you've got that 32-inch clear opening, but how heavy is that door? What's in that door that might make it heavier? Is it fire rated? Should we go with the standard duty opener or a heavy duty opener? And then, of course, what type of knowing act do we want to see? And that's why I use hands-on operation in air quotes, because you could get a push plate, but you could also get a wave plate where you could just wave your hand in front of the plate and not actually touch anything. I'm sure you all have seen those recently as COVID-19 has really redefined how we operate automatics. And of course, we want to review the standard and what it requires of this door. So again, it's going to have an operation of 15 seconds from open to close, or almost 3 times that of a high energy door. It's going to have a hold open time of 5 seconds minimum. And then it's going to be operating at a maximum of 15 pounds of force. I'm sure you all have walked in and out of low energy doors a million times, but to illustrate kind of what 15 pounds of force looks like, if I put my shoed foot in the path of a door that was, let's say, opening, one of 2 things is going to happen. One, it's not going to be enough force to actually move my foot. 2, and not just my foot, but like not even my grandmother, you know, it's not that much force. Finally, it's going to either stop right where it is and continue at a limited rate to the open position, or it's going to notice my shoed foot and continue stop and then go back to closed. And that's that safety system that's integrated into your low energy doors. Of course, you want to specify your doors complete with the knowing act activation, what type, what size, what style, the proper signage, meeting the ADA and exceeding the ADA requirements. And again, because of the force with which this door moves, those safety sensors and guide rails not going to be required. Let's further define a knowing act as we dig into a low energy door. Of course, this refers to the activation of an automatic door by means of pressing a switch, wave plate, a key card, a key fob with the intent of opening the door. Just like our guide rails, your knowing act is going to have its own requirements. So it must be mounted at a height of 36 to 48 inches above the finished floors. Right now, California is the only state that requires a full-length push plate from the finished floor to 48 inches. And the idea behind that is people who are newly disabled, like for example, my mom, she recently twisted her ankle and she was on crutches. If she had to go to the doctor's office and hit that bollard, you know, it might be a little weird because she's taller. It might be weird for her to reach down to get to it while she's got, you know, that crutch in her under her arm and everything like that. It's really awkward. And so that full length push plate would allow for her to take the crutch and just boom, hit the bollard because it's a full length. Also, we want to consider people who don't have access to any of their limbs or, in situations like that. In addition, the knowing act must be located within sight of the door. Very common sense. It must be also located out of the swing path of the door. We don't want to risk getting hit by the door when we hit the knowing act. And then, of course, an additional hold open time of 1 second per foot will be added if located more than 12 feet from the door. So as I said earlier, it's going to have a minimum 5-second hold open time. If that bollard is 13 feet away from that door, then your hold open time is going to be 5 + 1, 6 seconds total. However, I will tell you, this is up to your ATM certified installer, and a lot of them that I speak to are going to put a door like that at 6 to 8 seconds anyhow. Of course, and I've said it before with COVID-19, we are realizing more and more each day that cross-contamination is very real. We recently actually had an example where our colleague was working in a hospital. He had to remove an acoustic tile in a drop ceiling. And the safety director making his round said, hey, if you could button that up quick, I'm concerned about cross-contamination. So real quick, he got that shut up, and then they had a conversation about cross-contamination where our colleague asked the safety director if the push plates, because he noticed there were tons of them in this hospital, he asked if the push plates had a disinfecting schedule. And the safety manager wasn't sure, but he took him up on that concern and actually had some of the push plates swabbed. What they found was about 230 some communicable diseases on many of the push plates, which included staph and MRSA. So please do me a favor. I don't care if you're in a hospital or at a crosswalk, folks, use your elbow because that's gross. And that's why I think touch-free activation, and I mean this pun, is going to be the wave of the future. See what I did? Now, if you take a look at the picture on the bottom left, I think touch-free activation is a little bit more customizable than your standard push plate ever has been. The one on the bottom left is surrounded in a blue translucent plastic. And what's great about this one is when it's waved in front of, it'll illuminate that perimeter to instruct the pedestrian that they've done their job and that door is about to open. Alternatively, it could stay on. You could arrange it so that that light stays on always. And once activated, that light will then go off to instruct the pedestrian they've done their job. But, another added benefit, perhaps that hallway's a little bit dark or, it's a laboratory and there are light sensitive scenarios going on the other side of that door. And then, of course, you've got your one on the bottom right. So as long as your cover plate says wave to open to instruct your pedestrian what they need to do on their end, this center waving hand could actually be the logo or a letter from their letterhead as opposed to just that waving hand. So you've got some options here. Of course, just like with our high energy doors, you've got to have your required signage. And on a low energy door, it's going to have to be labeled as an automatic door. It's going to have that yellow background with that black text in a 6-inch round diameter circle with 5/8 inch tall text. Very specific. Of course, your ATM certified installer is going to be responsible for getting the sticker on. And they're also going to make sure that they instruct the user of the activation method. Now, there are a couple scenarios where you might just see one sticker, or you might see this combo. For example, when I go to my doctor's office, the nurse actually has a trigger that activates the door behind her desk. And so that door just says automatic caution door on the exterior. But when I leave the doctor, I get to see myself out, and there is a push plate there for me to hit. And that door on that side says automatic caution door, activate switch to operate. Now that we've covered our high energy and our low energy, I want to talk about some of the details that they share in kind. So our surface mount door operators, these of course could be used for single doors or pairs. Of course, if it's a pair, that header that you see there in the picture, that'll be continuous, not just two side by side. Of course, the door operator is going to be mounted to the door frame and wall. And then of course that push or pull arm is attached to the door. In a scenario where I think this is important, a lot of these are either reversible or need to be ordered handed. So you definitely want to take consideration into that. And especially if you're, for example, working on developing a corridor and you don't want any of the line of the corridor to be interrupted aesthetically. And so instead of having your operators on the outside, you could opt to have them on the inside of each room, pushing that door open, as opposed to pulling that door open and disrupting that line that you want. Then, of course, we have our overhead concealed. And now this is a package where you'll know from day one that this door is going to be automatic, because that header is going to conceal that same operator, but it's going to be a complete door and frame package. And then, of course, we have our in-floor operators. These are really great for your arched or slanted openings, where low soffit conditions exist, or really where an overhead concealed is just going to detract. I will say, for your exterior doors with in-floor operators, pay attention that they will be less economic and need a little bit more preparation. You're going to have electric wires ran underground into a watertight cement encasement, and that's really just going to mean more coordination between trades. So you definitely want to choose tradesmen that work well together in a scenario where you have in-floor operators. Of course, our operators can operate all sorts of door types, be it they're single doors, pairs of doors, as we were talking about earlier, uneven pairs of doors, and of course, double egress. Double egress openings are a pair of swinging doors where each leaf swings in the opposite direction of each other. And in addition to that, Adam has designated that a double egress door also operates simultaneously. That way there's no confusion for anyone on either side of the door how this door should operate at all times. Of course, electric locking is also very important for our monitored entrances and the like. They're going to provide that automatic latch and release point for your lock set. What's great about having an electric lock on an automatic door is you won't need any auxiliary power supply. That can be tied and coordinated right into the operator. It's usually going to be powered by 24 volts DC at that point, and it's going to allow for the release of the door when activated by that button or card reader. So if I could slow that process down for you, let's imagine a key fob. For this automatic door, what you're going to do is take your fob to that access point. You'll allow for the door to unlock by putting your key fob next to that access point on the wall. You'll then hit your actuator, and that will allow for the door to open with no error, having previously unlocked it. Very easy. Now that we've covered our swinging doors, let's dig into our sliding doors. In this section, we're going to look at our terms and definitions, door types, activation and safety systems, as well as access control, options, and our lovely, lovely signage. If you all can't sleep tonight, send me an email and I will send you all of the information regarding these codes and standards and listings. As a matter of fact, here's my email for you in the chat. But I like to show you this picture just simply to say automatic doors can fit in any situation, and we have to pay particular care as to what codes we're following, given what that point of egress requires. So if we're working on a hurricane-resistant entrance, we're looking at that gold standard Miami-Dade building code. All of our operators are tested before they walk out of the door, and it's in that scenario that we're considering our UL listing and testing standards. And then, of course, out in the field and in our factories, we're taking into consideration our ANSI BHMA codes 156.10 and 156.19, as well as what Adam requires from us to do to make sure that all of these doors are safely installed. As I mentioned earlier, I was a glazer in a former life, and therefore a manual door guy by default. And so when I started in automatics, the terms and definitions and line drawings were a little fuzzy for me, but they're really quite simple when you break them down. So in a line drawing, X is going to indicate a sliding panel that slides along a side light. O then is going to indicate a fixed panel or a side light. Then when you throw an S in front of either of those, they now swing out. So an SX is a sliding swinging panel, and that'll swing out to 90 degrees from any position of slide movement. And SO is going to be a swing out side light panel. Again, swings out to 90 degrees from that fixed position. P we see a little less frequently, but this indicates a partial panel, and that's going to be a guide for a sliding panel. I'm going to show you what that looks like on our surface mount applications here in about 2 or 3 slides. I like to say with sliding doors, the sky's the limit, but these are some of our typical sliding door configurations. Again, don't want you to think that you have to sacrifice anything for image or aesthetics. So if there's something that you're interested in fabricating, definitely do ask the question, because if you don't see it, that doesn't mean that we can't make it happen. Of course, where our SO, SXs are concerned, those are important for our breakout options. As we were talking about, those are going to allow that door to break open 90 degrees from any position of the slide or from the fixed position. So on the left-hand side, what we're showing you here is a partial breakout. And that's going to be an O, SX, SX, O. Commonly, we see these in our retail facilities because the really what your breakaway device is for a situation of exiting, where a situation occurs that people need to get out quickly, be it a blackout, a fire, something like that. And that's going to be relative to the building egress requirements. So what's the capacity of that building is the question. So for a retail store, the capacity is not usually that great. We often see just an O, SX, SXO, or like for our Dollar Generals, we often see a 22-foot header with an OO, SX, SX, OO configuration. Again, in all those scenarios, it's just the doors that are breaking out, and we call that a partial breakout. Then over to the right, that's a full breakout. So that's going to be an SO, SX, SX, SO. All these panels will open wide to let all of the people out in that building. And that building's usually a higher capacity building, like a hotel or a hospital. In addition, I think it's important to remember automatic sliders with breakout options for those situations where you need a monitored point of access, and especially in a corridor where you might have things that are moving from one place to another. So for example, maybe you need to move a piano in a nursing home from one ward to the next, but there's a monitored point of access in between. You could break these doors out, move that piano through nice and easily without having to deglaze or demount anything, and you're in the clear. So not only will it provide that emergency egress, but also allow you to maintain that monitored point of access while being able to, as we say, freely move about the cabin. These are some of the typical door types that we've seen for our automatic sliders, and that's going to include your bipart at the top. That's two panels that slide opposite each other alongside lights. Of course, you'll notice this one also has a transom. As a glazer in the past, I often thought that it was my job to do all the transom work and this and that and the other thing, and the automatic doorman came and he threw that underneath my work. Not true. We can create an entire package that includes not only your transom, but also as many side lights as you might need adjacent to that opening. And then, of course, on the right here, also with the transom, you see our single door where one panel slides alongside a side light. And then down at the bottom, we have our telescopic. Telescopics are great for that retail store that's got that awkward sized opening. This particular building is actually a grocery store in Pennsylvania. The gentleman who purchased this grocery store took the bipart sliders out because he wanted to accommodate better two-way traffic. And so with this door, he also opted to get some additional technology. And with his microprocessor, this door is able to learn when the busiest times of day are and when the less busy times of day are. And so during the busiest times, it opens full steam ahead, as fast as it can and as wide as it can. And then during the less busy times, it opens a little slower and not quite as wide. And this will save him on his HVAC, his energy, and also allow still for two-way traffic to happen without any worry. This illustrates here our surface mount applications. And these are great, again, for when space is limited or where height or width issues occur. What's great about these is that the tracks can be mounted to the ground or the wall. And we were talking about our P panel earlier. If you take a look at that picture on the bottom, that's going to be a PSX-SXP to further illustrate when we might see that. Also on that bottom picture, I think it's important to note, even though that concrete goes the entire span of this full door, from side rail to side rail, if that walkway were only as wide as the point of egress, so where the doors are living, we wouldn't actually have to pour any additional concrete or cement or foundation or anything like that, because we can still mount those bottom rails just the same way we do the side rails and the top rail directly to the wall. And then, of course, how do we unlock, lock, and keep these safe? And that's where access control comes into play. If you take a look at these line drawings, you'll note that the lock points are illustrated by these solid black bars. So here we see our 2-point locking system, and this is just going to have our standard keyed hook bolt strike, as well as our single vertical at the top. Then, of course, we have our 3-point locking system, just a little more added technology. And this is going to give you that keyed hook bolt strike, still holding those doors together. But now you have 2 vertical rods, one at the top and one at the bottom. Then, of course, you'll notice for our access control locking system that this is the style of slider that is going to be tied into the on-site security system. You'll notice that the lock point is actually inside of the header, and that's because it coordinates with the operator and goes straight to the security system. And it's that solenoid that allows for the concealed vertical rods at the top to detract and retract. So basically, if we slow this down, you'll come into your hotel after dinner. It's 11 o'clock. The doors are locked. You'll go ahead and take your door card and hit the button. You'll walk up to the door. The sensor will notice you. But when you took your card and hit the button with it, those concealed vertical rods retracted. And that allows for the sensor then to open the door wide so that you can walk right in and go up to your hotel room, no problem. Conversely, if there were a emergency situation where you needed to get out of these doors, on the interior side, we're going to have panic release hardware. And that's going to ensure that this door isn't damaged in a situation where there's a power outage or a fire. You'll depress that panic, and that's going to retract that concealed vertical rod at the top. And then those doors will be able to be broken out completely. And that's what makes access control locking really handy and long lasting for a door that needs time security. Of course, just like with our swing door, you're going to have your battery backup, which is, again, able to be added at any time, is charging on the energy that that door uses day in and day out. And again, can be added at any time. And I think that's important to note because oftentimes, we're building in a situation where we don't always know what the infrastructure might entail. So if the infrastructure is quite old and we're seeing frequent brownouts, that might be news to us. And so we might need to go ahead and add a battery backup. Or, we might be the first building that's installed or completed with occupancy in a newer place, and we might see an occasional blackout. So at that point, we might want to add a battery backup just to ensure that as construction is still continuing, our doors aren't stopping along with it. And of course, we have to cover our sensors when talking about your automatic doors. So the sensor I'm showing you here is going to actually be 2-in-1, both for activation and safety. If you look at the picture at the bottom right, you'll notice this large blue bubble. That's our activation zone. And as that gentleman walks into it, those doors open wide. However, you'll also notice that red light curtain just beyond it. That's going to be your safety system. That's going to be what keeps that open door open. Should I be walking in and Mark be walking out and we decide to have a conversation right there at the threshold, it's going to be that red light curtain that notices our presence and keeps that open door open. Of course, your sensors are also adjustable, given some of the things that may or may not happen out in the field. Perhaps it's very windy and there's a lot of deciduous trees that drop their leaves that blow along this door. Well, we don't want that to be activating the door. We can raise that activation zone, so that way it's just pedestrians that are activating the door. Additionally, you could opt to have a camera installed in your sensors. Walmart actually uses cameras in their sensors to be tied into their on-site security system for a couple reasons. One, risk management, of course, also to fight litigation should it occur in the threshold, and also for child abduction. In the unfortunate situation, we can see where a child was, with whom, and at what time. And all of this, of course, is made possible by our CAN bus. CAN, of course, is an acronym standing for Controller Area Network. It's not only going to provide that motion detection and safety, but because it can be fully monitored and is software-based, we can gain metrics from it. We actually are developing technology now that allows us to remotely log into a door, see what's going on with it, and perhaps walk through with someone who's on site what they need to do to fix or get that door back into operation. And then, of course, regardless of all our beautiful technology and optimization, we still have to inform the pedestrian how this door operates and where. And so you're going to need to add your signage per ANSI 156.10. However, with your sliding doors, you can actually be a little creative with it. As long as the text in the background are contrasting, you can change the font to reflect the letterhead of the company, or you can even add logos on either side of the wording. And finally, of course, our automatic folding doors. Automatic folding doors, as I said earlier, really fill the gap between your swingers and your sliders. They're going to give you a safe way to accommodate two-way traffic where maybe a slider is just not large enough. However, they're designed for entrances between 4 to 8 feet wide. After 8 feet wide, you're going to want to start asking yourself some questions like, maybe we should consider a telescopic, or is a bipart really enough? Because after 8 feet wide, this door gets so heavy in the way that it operates, that it might not last as long or may need more service than we want for an automatic door to have. But what's great about folding doors is they could either be low energy or high energy. These are just a couple examples of some great installations, but I think what both of these reflect, as we were talking about earlier with our guide rails, is that because in their open position at 90 degrees perpendicular, because they're less than 6 inches away from the wall, neither of these, at high energy, need guide rails. In fact, the one on the right-hand side was actually a hotel that had a single sliding door. And as people were leaving with their luggage on the trolleys, they would bump into the door and break it out, which is great because that's what that door is supposed to do. However, it's really embarrassing when you're, trying to struggle out to your car and you break the door, at least in your mind, maybe, at someone's hotel. And it's really awkward for the staff to keep on having to throw it back in the track. So the owner decided, you know what, let's go with these folding doors. And now large families with small kids can just walk right in, no problem. And then as people go to leave, they're not banging into the door with their luggage trolleys. As I said earlier, if you don't see it, definitely do ask, because shape and size are no limit to automatic doors. At the top left there, that's actually an automatic slider that looks like a revolver, but because it's got an interior and exterior door, it kind of creates its own vestibule, which again helps in that energy conservation. At the top right, that's actually an airport where very few of the walls are 90 degrees or straight, and so we bent the glass on this axis to accommodate that same shape. Of course, with shape and size, special finishes are just par for the course. Be it custom paint, vinyl wrapped, or powder coated, all clad, even antimicrobial. Special finishes are definitely available for your automatic sliders. In fact, the antimicrobial finish that we use is a mechanical antimicrobial finish, meaning that the ions are positively charged. And what happens is, as negatively charged ions, which carry bacteria, meet the finish, the positively charged ions destroy them and they slough off. And this is different from a chemical reaction, which again leaches chemicals into the environment. And sustainability, of course, is always very important for us. So with our swing doors, sliding doors, and folding doors all taken into consideration, our codes, listings, and standards all looked at. Do you all have any questions for us? And I see we do. I will and can send you that presentation afterwards. Who typically provides, the question is, who typically provides the remote release button at a reception desk and the associated wiring from the door controller to the desk? That answer is going to be, I've seen it both ways. And it's really going to depend on the security system. However, I would suggest that the people who are doing the security supply the button and the wiring to the door. That's probably going to be more economic for the entire situation. And yes, the cameras in the sensors can be tied into a building-wide security camera system. Absolutely. Bob just typed the exact same thing. That's my boss, y'all. Hi, Bob. You all have my email. And of course, I'm going to be sending out your certificates per your request, as well as assigning your AIA credit. If any of those questions were answered to your liking or were as clear as mud, definitely do feel free to email me directly. And I really appreciate all of you joining us today. Ah, thank you so much. And for sure, if we end up in your specifications, do let me know. That way, we can take your job name and make sure that we walk it through, so that, if it's your first experience with us or your 10th experience with us, we're guiding you through that process and getting you all the submittal information that you may need. Mhm. Thank you, Jeff. Yes, Julianne, we can review specifications. As a matter of fact, I'm working right now to write a three-part spec for a job in San Francisco. So should you need spec review, definitely do reach out.